You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss and Kristen West, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to What Women Want Talk Radio. Thank you for joining us for our Gutsy Girl Show tonight with Kate White, the former editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan magazine, now New York Times bestselling author, and I'm here with my co-host, Kristen West.
Hello, everyone. We are live tonight. It's so exciting.
It's so exciting. We have cameras pointing from all over the place. I feel like such a superstar in the studio tonight. Happy April. And as a lot of you may know, I normally broadcast from New York. So this is very exciting because I'm here at home. I feel like my second home in LA with Kristen. And it's so fabulous to get to see your expressions on your face and everything that you're doing over here instead of kind of just going, and guessing. So it's just amazing. And it's quite a treat to be here. And Armin Nasseri also is here helping us navigate through everything. Thank you so much, Armin. We really appreciate you being here. So it's an exciting night. And Kristen, the Gutsy Girl thing, I just can't even get over it. How to be a Gutsy Girl.
We so need it right now. It's the perfect time for this book, and I'm so excited to talk to Kate about this. And I think everybody needs to be a little bit gutsier and ballsier, and it's a great conversation that we're going to have tonight.
That's right, and the conversation keeps going because we are over 1 million downloads. Yes, we are. Thank you very much. Since we first hit the airwaves, and our archives are on latalkradio.com, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and of course we're all over the place with social media. And we also have sponsorships that we're offering, so if you want to get in on the action, because if we're all over the place, then obviously you are too. So go ahead and visit our website, but wait till after the show at whatwomenwantradio.com. So what an important topic tonight. Okay, Kate White's book, The Gutsy Girl Handbook, was just released about 30 hours ago. So this is really exciting, a new release. We have her coming on the line in just a few minutes, talking about all about female empowerment. And the thing I love about this, Kristen, is that, we're talking about the Me Too movement and the marches and everything that's going on with the women's movement these days, this year and this past year, is that I want to know how to be gutsier without being, bitchier type of thing. I want to know how I can go out there and just, strut my stuff.
Well, Kate has this interesting concept called bitch envy, and I'm dying to know what that's all about. It was in one of her prior books. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to shed also labels that don't serve us anymore and really, embrace some inner bitchiness.
Inner moxie, as Dr. Robbie Ludwig would say.
Yes, that's a lovely word. And we love Dr. Robbie, too.
Embracing our inner moxie, people. We got that. All right, so Kate's going to tell us just how to do that in a few minutes. And my background, of course, comes from the high fashion modeling industry with Ford New York for a while. And after that, I was a magazine editor. And I don't know if Kate knows this yet, but I was actually working there when she was there at Cosmopolitan. So that's exciting for me, too. And that career led me to hosting and reporting as an editor. I was at More Magazine, and I was a reporter and a host on Better TV. And I've been on all the TV networks around the country, both regional and national. I'm a regular contributor at the moment for NBC and Fox. And I also founded the company What Women Want Networking 7 years ago, alongside with the show. We're nationwide with several chapters, and we're hosting our second National Women's Conference, What Women Want National Conference. I already sold a ticket to this one, so we're excited about that at the Hyatt Regency in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm also a St. Martin's Press author and the mom of teenage twin girls, who I think are coming in the studio. I'm not sure in a little bit, so that's really exciting for me, too. It's all the way around exciting for me this evening. And Kristen, your career is just so thrilling. It's taking off like wildfire.
I had the best conversations between being on LA Talk Radio and then being the host of Domain of Horror's Horror Talk. I get to talk to all sorts of lovely people. I'm so excited for that. And, of course, The Lich is coming out soon. It's in post-production. I actually talked to James Balsamo last night. So I've got some movies coming out.
Excuse us.
It's exciting.
Interviewing Tony Moran and James Balsamo and all kinds of studly people over there.
Oh, yeah. And we had the cast of Corbin Nash, the new vampire noir thriller, as they're calling it.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
I got to talk to them last night, too. It was exciting.
Good. good. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank one of our sponsors for tonight's show. We have Everyone Buys Printing in Some Form. We were just talking about printing earlier. The company you can trust for great service with that is Design and Print Resource. Gloria Strayer, who has an amazing story, by the way, herself from her childhood. She's from LA. Founder and owner of Design and Print Resource in Anaheim, California. And she's been in the print industry for 40 years. So her services also include warehousing and distribution. Give them a call at 714-687-9200 or go to dndpresource.com. Okay, now, is it time to bring on Kate? Because I just can't stand it anymore.
I can't stand it anymore either. It is time to bring on Kate.
Excellent. Kate White, former media executive and New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling author of the new career Bible, The Gutsy Girl Handbook, Your Manifesto for Success. Kate has been the editor-in-chief of 5 major U.S. magazines. Is there anything this woman doesn't do? Including Working Woman, Red Book, and for 14 years, Cosmopolitan, where she increased circulation by 30% and oversaw all aspects of the brand. And yes, she's broken bread with Beyonce, Kim Kardashian, and Bon Jovi, but not at the same time. Kate's new book is a totally revised edition of her groundbreaking 1990s bestseller, Why Good Girls Don't Get Ahead, But Gutsy Girls Do. She's also the best-selling author of 13 murder mysteries and psychological thrillers, which have been published in many languages around the world. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thank you, ladies. Wow, it's so exciting to be here.
And it's so exciting to have you. And oh my gosh, congratulations. We're going on just over 24 hours with this new release.
Yeah, exactly.
But you've been through this before, but I feel like it's special because this book, you revamped it from the Why Good Girls Don't Get Ahead But Gutsy Girls Do era.
Yeah, I actually had not really thought of doing it. And the last paragraph of that book was, my publisher will kill me for saying this, but this book will be obsolete by the time my daughter's in her 20s. And my daughter's in her 20s, and we were talking, the publisher and I, and we said, hey, it's not obsolete. Women still need this information. And so we were like, okay, let's do it again. I actually had a funny thing happen just this week. I saw on Google Alerts there was a story about a really gutsy MP in the UK, a woman in her, I think, probably early 40s. And they interviewed her, and they said, how did you get to be you? And she said, I read this book in my teens called Why Good Girls Don't Get Ahead that really shaped me. So I feel there's still some women who hopefully could be inspired.
Kristen, you and I aren't getting ahead, then that's it. We're done.
We're just going to have to get deep in that gut and figure out what we have to do, Judy.
That's right. And you know what, Kate? I can't wait any longer because we have several parallels in our lives. I was at your offices when you were editor-in-chief there.
Judy, you have to tell me. You said that. What was I in a fugue state or something?
Oh my God! Well, I wasn't like Michelle Promaleko or anything, but I was there as a freelance editor. I was a bookings editor for the Style and Beauty issue, which used to be an insert.
Right? Yes,
but
of course.
I think it's now a standalone issue, right?
Well, I think it was discontinued since I've left, but Michelle worked on that, and of course she's now the fabulous editor-in-chief of Cosmo.
She is an amazing
you worked
woman.
on that project. That's great.
I did, yeah. I did several seasons of that, so it was really fun every time to come into the Hearst building, and also I have to tell you, so you had a schedule of writing your book while you were working. I remember reading somewhere that you worked from like 7:45 to 8:45 in the morning, and then you worked again another hour or two at night, and you had this schedule of sorts. And this is another parallel. Funny enough, I got my book deal when I was working at Cosmopolitan, and I would get on the train and write the book, flip open my laptop, write the book for 45 minutes, and I was training into the city. And then during lunch, I'd go down to the Hearst commissary and flip my laptop open and write all during my lunch. And you were kind of the same way, doing double duty there with writing the book. And, of course, you were putting many more hours into your position at Cosmo.
Well, I think what I was trying to do, Judy, and I don't know if you felt the same way, is to have a plan B, which is now called a side hustle. But being the editor-in-chief is a precarious situation. And as you know, we've been hearing these stories. I saw it last night on Extra, or E, is Anna Wintour going to get fired? When you hit your 50s and 60s as a magazine editor, you're vulnerable. And I just felt, look, I want to cover my ass as much as possible and make sure I've got a backup plan if I get fired. And I ended up not having to ever deal with that, but I did create a plan for myself to live a more entrepreneurial lifestyle. So I had a real goal in mind. And I love the idea of writing murder mysteries. So, yeah, I got up early. I took my kids to school, and then I got to the office probably about 8. As you probably remember, the Cosmo staffers just roll into about 9:30. Yeah. And so
in
that
their high
would give
heels.
me about an hour. And then on weekends, when my kids were little, they started sleeping to about 8 or 9, let's say. God, those are the days when that finally happened, as you probably know from twins. And so what I would do then is just get up really early on Saturday and Sunday and write for a couple of hours. And the pages added up. But I always recommend to anyone, if they're thinking about a side hustle, try it first on a freelance basis or volunteer basis so you know you really want to do it.
That's good advice.
Well, I'm such a fan. When I found out that you wrote mystery novels, I just had to ask this. You've written 12. Is that correct, Kate?
Yeah, though I just handed in the 13th, and I'm waiting for the response from the editor. Oh, you always do that, yeah.
Lucky number 13. You've got lucky number 13. Of all of those books that you've written in that genre, which one of your protagonists is your favorite protagonist, and why?
Well, 5 of the books have been standalones, and I'm just starting another standalone. That's a book that the character's never going to reappear again. Unless, hopefully, in a major motion
Unless you're in like a horror movie. Right? I mean, they always seem to pop up even when they die 5 times.
Yeah, but in 7 of the books, there's a character called Bailey Waggins who writes for magazines. And so she's a recurring character. And I have to say, this is so bizarre. I'm almost embarrassed to admit this. But sometimes when I go to bed at night and I'm working on one of the Bailey books, I'll just go over stuff in my head, dialogue, and I feel in a weird way like I know this person. And she's a little bit like me in that she has a little bit of a snarky sense of humor, but in other ways she's not like me at all. But I feel like I know her, and I think, gosh, I probably shouldn't admit that to anybody.
Well, we love embarrassing moments, and you mentioning them live on air, because good girls don't get ahead, right, Kate?
Oh, they don't. They don't. You've got to admit your gutsy moments and your moments that turned out to be gutsy even when you didn't intend them to be. You know, actually, when I went to the UK for the first book, they bought it in the UK as well, and I guess that's why that woman who's now an MP read it. And I was on a radio show there, and I felt like a bull in a china shop in the UK. They were looking at me like, what? And at one point I said to this woman who was interviewing me, I talked about how we often start out as gutsy as women, particularly this was true for baby boomer women, and then it gets squashed down by well-meaning parents sometimes or teachers. And I was telling her, I said, you know, when I was a young girl, I was filled with spunk. And she puts her hand over the mic and she goes, in the UK, that means sperm. And I was sort of like, oh my gosh, I just kept saying the wrong thing in the UK. So the fact this MP was influenced by me is shocking, because mostly I think I was just looked at as like, wow, what's this woman saying?
Well, you know, spunk. You're having a joyful life in her view. I mean, really. That's hilarious. Now, you say that the difference between a successful person and an unsuccessful person is going big or going home. So I'm interested in knowing, how big is big and how big is just foolish?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because one of the mistakes I think sometimes we make when we know we're supposed to go bold, and I would see this sometimes as the young women at Cosmo. They would come in sometimes with a big idea. The mistake is when it's all about you and your career. When you go big, it's got to be advancing the agenda for your company. So it's got to make sense within that. And if it's this far-out idea that's just going to be great for your career, it's really not going to work. I remember this young woman came in to me one day, and her boyfriend had gotten a job in Holland. And so she came in all excited. She had this idea that she wanted to do a series for us about somebody who is in a transatlantic relationship. And those kinds of pieces didn't work well at Cosmo. And so she had this big idea, but it was all about serving her needs. You really have to think about what's good for my company, what's going to drive profitability, what's going to create buzz. And those are the ideas that matter. And it's not enough to do what you've been told to do anymore. You've got to set yourself apart from the pack by coming up with these ideas. I just saw this really interesting study that was done at the university, at Hastings, which is out in California, the law school, the work-life center at the law school, that men are 20% more likely to be given the kind of glamour work that gets you promoted, like running a new team or representing your company at an industry event or working on a project with a major client. And so those are the things that are beyond your job. So if you're not being given those, you've got to raise your hand for them, or you've got to ask, what's missing here? And say to your boss, you know what I'd love to do for us? Because we don't have this. Would you be open to me doing this?
It's interesting that you call it glamour work, and I think there is a power in being the face of a company or an organization. And some people, and I'm speaking from sort of an acting perspective, some people have a definite fear of being in front of people. They have stage fright. They have a fear of performance. And it's interesting, you've also said that you don't have to be 100% ready to really take those leaps that you need to take in your career. How do we combat that fear of failure?
Well, that is one of the things I mentioned in the book that I feel so strongly about. There were a lot of references. I think it's even in Lean In and in The Confidence Gap about a study that showed that men feel they have to be only 60% ready to go after a promotion or a new job, where women feel they have to be 100% ready. And it turns out there really wasn't a study like that. Somebody tried to track it down, and it just turned out to be extrapolated from a comment this male executive made. But he's right. Women often feel, I've got to know everything before I go after this promotion. Promotions and new jobs are meant to be stretches and learning curves. So you have to sometimes tell yourself, I'm going to say yes and then figure it out. So how do you deal with that fear of readiness? I think, one, you accept that failure is a normal part of work life. And guys are better at accepting that than we are sometimes, and they also reframe it. And as hey, that was a learning experience. It didn't work out, but I learned a lot. We have to be better at doing that. And I think we also have to realize at times we don't feel ready, where we come up with a million excuses why we shouldn't go after a certain opportunity. It often means it's just our fear of failure getting in the way. And override that, say yes, figure it out as you go. And if you fail, try to come to terms with the fact that a certain amount of failure in work is always going to be there, and you just try to learn from it and make adjustments as you go forward, recalibrate.
You know, I don't see that you've had a lot of failures, it doesn't seem to me. So if you want to throw one out in the course of the show, that'd be fantastic.
But yeah, how about Lisa Kudlow on the cover of Cosmo? That would be a failure.
Oh, why? What happens? Do tell.
Well, one of the things that used to be really tough at Cosmo, because we sold a lot of copies on the newsstand, and while I was there, I drove it up over 2 million. So then when you had a 1.8, that was seen as, oh boy, what happened? Whereas 5 years before, that would have been seen as a triumph. And what I used to do after I would say to my husband, I would call him up and say, make me a margarita tonight, okay? Promise. I would take that cover that didn't do so well. Unfortunately, my wins outnumbered my losses. But I would take the loser. I would put it on my rug for what I called the rug test. And then I would take a group of winning covers and put it above it, and then some losing covers and put it below it. And I would analyze that with a fresh perspective that I hadn't had 4 months ago when I was first designing it and picking the art and picking the clothes for it. And often I could see, okay, Lisa Kudlow, for instance, she's winning. We loved her in Friends, but she doesn't have the edge of the true Cosmo cover. And maybe it wasn't just her, but it was the outfit we put her in, and I could sometimes see that. And I think the thing you have to be gutsy enough to do to help you with failure is analyze your failures. Don't be afraid to do that. There's some interesting research that shows that people, particularly people who are high achievers, they tend to take more credit for their successes and dismiss their failures sometimes. So that's like, let's say your boss calls you onto the carpet or you get fired. Your boyfriend, your partner, your friends are all going to rally and say, they don't know what they're doing. But it's really important to step back and say, was I not really doing a great job in this situation? In my case, it was I stupid putting this person on the cover or writing these vague cover lines? And the more you can not bury your head in the sand or sort of say, I'm just not going to think about it. Tomorrow's another day. But really look at failure and see what you can learn from it. It's liberating, and it helps you deal with the failure because you think, you know what, I've got a plan now.
And also I feel like we can go look back and figure out what our gut was saying. Oftentimes I think back and go, oh, I knew. Something was telling me not to go for that. And it's something, and I just move forward and learn from that feeling when I get it again to listen to it. It doesn't always happen, but, we live and learn. But
I feel
that is such a good point. I feel that even with this book that I just did, there were a couple things in terms of the PR that I realized I should have stepped back and said, why am I not happy with this plan? Mm-hmm. And when you do that and really articulate it, it allows you to get to the next place and go, you know what, I think I need to ask them to do this. And I also think it's very important to analyze your wins, too, because sometimes things that are successes are successes for a different reason than we know. In the book, I just mentioned that there was a Keira Knightley cover that I did that was huge, just such a big sale. And it was this pink cover, and she was in this Chloe top. And, of course, after this numbers came in, I wanted another Keira Knightley cover. But when I did focus groups, the women didn't know who she was. It was early in her career. They just loved the look of the cover. So what I really needed wasn't another Keira Knightley cover, but another pink cover with another great Chloe top. And so I think just as important as it is to understand your failures, it's good to understand your wins and why your gut was telling you one thing then, just as you said, or why did it work out, because it might be different than you first thought.
Yeah, well, I read an article where you said that you have a notebook and you write your questions in it periodically. And the article was recent, so I'm assuming you still do that.
And you said in the quote, if you put it out to the universe, an answer, let's see, you said if you put it out into the universe, an answer presents itself, right?
Oh, yeah.
Do you consider yourself...
Who I heard that from?
Tell me.
Well, I heard it from Laura Day, who wrote the book Practical Intuition. And we were at a Hertz conference, and she sat next to me on the bus to dinner. And I just thought that was really interesting. And it's a little new agey, but I started doing it. And I do it with the plots for books. And it isn't as kooky as it sounds, because what you're doing is priming your subconscious to take in information. And I think it works with things like wait, what should be the next step in my career? Where should I go with this? I need an idea for the sales conference. What should it be? And what happens in this miraculous way, and I use it for both work and for writing mysteries, is that you'll be walking along and, with the mysteries, it might be seeing something like a glove lying on the ground, and all of a sudden you think, what if I wrote a mystery about a woman, she disappears and all that's left is a glove? And so you're priming your subconscious to receive information, and it's such a great tool. And I've read other creative people talk about doing something kind of similar to this, putting it out there to the universe.
Putting it out there. You're listening to What Women Want Talk Radio with our interview with Kate White, and we have another supporter of our show tonight. It's Dr. Howard Sobel from New York City. As time evolves, so does your skin, and caring for it is an evolving art that requires a skillful science, an eye for detail, and a masterful touch. At Sobel Skin, Dr. Howard Sobel combines the latest advances with decades of experience to provide cosmetic dermatological solutions for wrinkles, skin pigmentation, thinning hair, non-surgical fat reduction, tattoo removal, and skin tightening. So visit sobelskin.com or call 212-288-0060 for more information. Now let's get back to this kind of, innate knowing of what you're going to do next and priming your mind. What do you think, Kristen?
Oh, I think this is fascinating, and I love it. I think intuition is one of the gifts that many women have that just goes completely undervalued.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Kay, I have to ask you, what's the gutsiest thing you've done lately?
Well, probably one of the gutsiest things that I'm reaping the benefits of is my husband and I bought a house in Uruguay when I was at Cosmo, knowing that I was planning to leave, and we lived there in the winter. And it's been so delicious. And one of the things that I believe in is that you have to be a risk agent, not just a change agent, but a risk agent. And you have to be willing to almost sort of say, what's the risk I'm going to take today? And the more you take risks, the easier it gets. And we had just thought, wouldn't it be great when our lives change a little bit to live in South America or someplace warm in the winter? And we primed ourselves to be open to that. So when we saw this house in Uruguay, we bought it. And it's been intoxicatingly exciting to be there. And it's a reminder to me that change, even though it's scary at first, it's really fun, it's sexy, it's exhilarating. And to me, I try to let my home in Uruguay remind me to keep taking risks. Ask yourself, what have I done to break the law today? And I don't mean really the law, but just what have I done to
come on,
shake
Kate,
it up?
get gutsy.
Right.
Well, I think that's fascinating, and I think we could all use a little bit of a deeper dive into cultures that are not necessarily our own.
Totally.
And I applaud you for that, because we do live in a big world, even though we're all connected some way and somehow. And I think one thing that really limits women in a way is that need. We talked about it before, about being a good girl. And sometimes in being a good girl, a lot of us...
Or perfect girl,
Or
right?
perfect girl. And a lot of us, really, especially I was thinking about it in high school, you never liked the teacher's pet, though.
And that's the nerdy girl.
But it's the nerdy girl that kind of kisses up to the teacher and kind of insinuates her way into being the president of the club or
What's
whatever.
wrong with that?
But some
kidding.
people have an aversion to that, and
Yeah.
I think you actually came up with a great
Combination.
term for that. That it's a little bit less high school and more work centric, which is called bitch envy.
Yeah.
What is that?
Do you know, I'm so glad you brought that up, because as you said, it was in the last book I did, but I really think it's a great concept. When you find yourself envious of some woman, and maybe it's the woman who seems to be brown-nosing the boss, you mentioned teacher, but it could be brown-nosing the boss, our first reaction might be to put her down a little bit. I can't believe she does that. But when you find yourself feeling churned up about something another person is doing, and it could be male too. But I think it's important to understand that point it back to yourself, that you actually may be having such a hyper reaction because deep down you know you should be doing more of what she's doing. So if she does seem to be brown-nosing the boss, it could be because you need more face time with the boss.
See, Kristen?
And you you don't like doing that, but you see her doing it and you put her down for it, but really part of you knows I should be doing some of that. So when you do find yourself having any kind of negative reaction to someone or any kind of envy, turn it into yourself and just ask, is it because I want some of what she has or something similar to what she has? Should I be doing something similar to her?
Taking a step back and analyzing and thinking about it, like in the failing.
Right. Well, and I think when I was in high school, and full disclosure, which was a few years back, when it came time to vote for class clown and teacher's pet and most likely to succeed, I remember praying, dear God, please, I would like to win, most likely to succeed, but please don't let me win teacher's pet. Please don't let me win teacher's pet. Please don't let me win teacher's pet. Please, dear God, please don't let me win teacher's pet. And God did answer my prayer that day. But people do have an aversion to that. And in all honesty, you really have to ingratiate yourself to people, your higher ups. And I think you made such a valid point earlier about not doing it just for you, but for doing it for the company and being a change agent and doing it for the whole instead of just you. I think that's what makes teacher's pet and work bitches, for lack of a better word.
Well, I have a question
cloying
about that, Kristen, that you brought up. Kate, I feel like, I don't know if you did, but I feel like I would have a lot of conflict if I was working in publishing industry, especially magazines. It's such a corporate environment. And here you are on the side writing these mysteries, and I don't know if you were in the psychological thrillers, you did that first, or the mysteries, but what kind of inner conflict was there when you were, during the day, really 150% into the Hearst Corporation, and then you're off and living in almost a fantasy world on the side? Was there any kind of issue there that you had doing that?
I don't think so, because I felt I'm doing something for me and I'm giving 150% during the day, and I was so devoted to Cosmo, but I made sure that they could never call me in and say, your eye isn't on the ball.
Right.
There's
well,
somebody
the 30%
I interviewed
increase
for
in
the book.
circulation, I can believe that's true.
Right. You just have to
Yeah.
be sure that's the case. And there's a great guy who's a organizational work psychologist who I interviewed the book, who says when you have a job, your 3 goals are make sure your boss likes you, make sure your boss likes you is 1, make sure your boss likes you is 2, and then do your job is 3. And somebody came up to me after a conference where I spoke recently and said something about, my female boss is threatened by me. And she wanted me to give her advice. And I said, you're doing a bad job dealing with your boss, because if you think she's threatened by you, you're not handling her well. You're not managing it well. You've got to make your boss feel you're on her team, that you're there to serve her, because ultimately that's how you get rewarded when your boss thinks you're there for her or him. And so I think it's really important sometimes to put some things aside and just say, how am I going to dazzle this person? And ultimately, you got to think about yourself too. But your main goal in a position is to please your boss by your performance, and you can't lose sight of that. Now, that said, one mistake I think sometimes we make is focusing too much on our work success and not enough on our job success, and not enough about our career success. And I really recommend that every week you spend 30 minutes just saying, okay, where am I right now? Am I feeling good about it? Have I stayed too long at my job? Am I too happy here? Because when you're really happy, it often means you're not being challenged anymore. And it was during one of those sessions with myself on a Saturday morning with a cup of coffee that I realized I want to do something else just as a plan B. So those are really important. So yes, it's important to please your boss, please your company, but you also want to make sure you're managing your success too in your career.
I think that's brilliant. And I think not enough people do that, and then they get stuck. And I think you pointed to something very important, is just because you feel happy does not mean that it's going to stay.
No, or
Yeah.
and also if you're not happy, you have to realize that and really look into it too.
No,
Right. Why aren't you happy? Is it the wrong fit? Was it a good fit at one point, but you've shifted? And I was talking to someone today who had been doing her job for 9 years. And I thought, wow, she probably hasn't stepped back and said, is it time for a change? Because that's a long time.
It is a long time. I mean, that's a long time. That's longer than some people stay in marriages.
Did she seem unhappy?
I could sense a little restlessness. There's a woman who, I love this interview. She used to be head of Xerox, Ursula Burns. And she said in an interview a couple years ago that she loved people on her staff who fixed things before they were broken. And I believe in that. You sometimes have to look at something and see change on the horizon and realize this is the time to fix it, because when it is broken, it's hard to fix it. And when you're really unhappy in a job, it's hard to summon the energy to dust off the resume and get out there. So often the best time to do it is just when you're a little bit restless, when you're starting to realize, I think I've been here too long, because you are stepping back and looking. And that's the time to begin to say, let me think about where I want to go next.
Or simply do what you did and write some New York Times best-selling books and then and then leave.
Well, it really was a wonderful thing to have when I was ready to go, to know I had something. And I do a lot of public speaking, which I did in my job. So those were two good things to have. And maybe it's something you do as a volunteer, that you say, hey, I like this. I might want to go down in that direction. Or it could just be staying in your same wonderful field, but going to the next level.
And speaking of public speaking, you're doing us the honor of speaking on Tuesday, April 10th in New York City at the London Company Creative. I am so excited. We're having an event to celebrate Kate White's book release. We're going to have a party. There's going to be gin and sake, and Fatty Cakes New York is sending pastries, and we have, I know, right? We have makeup artists and nails and all kinds of things to pamper and get our Gutsy Girl on. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah, and if anyone listening is in New York, which I will be next week, I would love you to go onto whatwomenwantnetworking.com and RSVP for the event, because it is just going to be a blowout. I'm excited. Kristen, I'm sad that you can't be there.
I'm so jealous right now. Oh my goodness. Well, we'll just have to have Kate back here for a party in LA.
Yeah, she's going to rock the house on Tuesday. I'm so excited.
Have me. Wow, I'll be there on the next plane.
Yeah, no, totally.
Now, Kate, you call yourself the relentless architect of your career. How do you stay so relentless with all of the pressures and stuff that you've had to do?
Yeah.
Well, it just goes to some degree to putting that time aside. I heard this great expression when I was the editor of Working Woman. It was a management guru. And he said that there's an old Southern expression that says, when you're up to your ass in gnats and alligators, it can be hard to remember that the original goal was to drain the swamp. And he said, you've got to learn to drain the swamp as you slay the alligators, meaning the slaying of the alligators is the day-to-day stuff. Mm-hmm. And for me at Cosmo, that was picking out clothes for the cover and writing cover lines and top editing articles and maybe having lunch with Ludacris or something like that. But the big picture stuff was the draining of the swamp. And just as in your job, you need to book time every week to not just slay the alligators, but to drain the swamp. Where am I going with this? You know, for me at Cosmo, that hour I put aside every week was to think about okay, how is Gen Y going to be different than Gen X, and how do I have to shift the magazine direction? But you need to do that with your career too, and that's how you're the architect. You put aside that time and you think about the draining of the swamp. And it could be just asking yourself those questions we talked about a minute ago. What do I want? Am I restless? But it's also power networking, cyber networking, looking for sponsors, really maybe even taking a course, but knowing that you've got to stay on top of your career as much as you have to stay on top of your job.
I love that you brought up the cover lines. We've been talking about those a bit. I am a fan. I know you've written so many of them. So if you had to write the cover line of your life, what would it be, Kate?
Oh, gosh. That sort of stumps me.
In 5 words or less.
Yeah, I think it would just be, go big or go home. It's just that ultimately you want to go big because the rewards come from that. And what's the point of going out if you're not going to go big?
That's true. Actually, my motto lately has been go big. Because I don't want to go home. It's true though. I mean, you really have to go for it if you're going to go for it. And there's no other excuse. But you sound like, as you're speaking, I feel like you're categorizing a lot of facets of career, of life, and I try to live that way also, although they get a little convoluted sometimes and mixed up. But I'm wondering what the best advice is to keep those in separate boxes, but still, I guess it's a matter of balance, right? I don't know what balance is, but
yeah. but I also think we've lived in a world where people pride themselves too much on the amount of time they work. When I was first working at Glamour magazine, I won this college contest they have, the Top 10 College Girl Contest, and I went to work there. The editor, Ruth Whitney, who was considered just one of the most successful editors, she left at 5 every day. And she would get on the train to go to Westchester from Manhattan, and she would always tell me that she would spend the evenings with her husband and son, and they would sit after dinner, and the son would do homework, and she would do some glamour work. But by the time I got to Cosmo, it had become almost the in thing to stay really late, and people talked about how many hours they worked.
I think that's when I got there.
Yeah, and no one is ever going to say to you, they're never going to look at their watch and say, aren't you training for the marathon? Don't you have to get out of here by now? Or don't you have twins? Don't you have twins? Don't you have to get out of here now? You have to dare to set boundaries. I left Cosmo every single solitary day at 5:30.
Wow.
And my predecessor was there till 8:30 every night. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I have young kids. And no one ever called me on it. And I think, granted, it's tougher when you're in a more junior position, but let's say you just gradually make your boss realize you always get back to her emails by 8 the next morning, but you're not answering emails at 9 or 10 o'clock. Now, she may call you on it, but if you get into the habit of answering her emails at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, she's going to think it's okay to do it. So I think it's crazy what we've come to, that your personal life is so important, whether it's running the marathon or taking care of your kids or learning Italian or any of those things. We have to be brave enough to set the boundaries because our workplaces aren't going to do it for us.
I'm so glad you brought up boundaries. I think it's one of the things that we don't talk about enough. It's one of the things that really can hurt and harm people if they don't have a healthy sense of boundaries.
Well, that's when the lines become blurred,
right?
Yeah. When you don't have boundaries and you just push yourself.
Right, and then there's nothing left. You give of your cup and you give of your cup and you give of your cup, and then your cup's empty one day.
That's such a good point, that it's so nutty. And there was one time towards the end of my Cosmo time, where some guy, who probably had a stay-at-home wife who could take care of the kids, calls a meeting at 7 a.m. And I told the couple women on my team who are moms, I said, don't you dare go to it. And when I went there, I said, how can I be in a company filled with working moms, with all these magazines for moms and women, and somebody calls a meeting at 7 a.m.? What's wrong with this? And sometimes it takes, speaking up like that. One of the most gratifying things that happened to me was when the New York Times had a magazine group, I'd worked there, and then I left. When I came back, and I had that meeting you have in HR, they said, you complained when you left in your exit interview that we did not have a good maternity policy, and we took it to heart, and we changed our policy because of what you said in that meeting. And the idea that all I did was say one thing in this exit meeting, and it was, how can a company like this have such a bad maternity plan? So it's speaking up. It's about taking care of the people who work for you and respecting their personal time and their personal lives, and not demanding that they respond to your emails at 9 o'clock.
Well, God bless you for putting your foot down and fighting for women and, really standing up for yourself. In essence, you are still such a role model of so many women. And it's almost,
thanks so much.
Absolutely. And we count on people like you, no pressure. But this Gutsy Girl Handbook is really, you're the perfect author for it, because you've been through so much and you've accomplished so much, but at the same time, you're not going to be pushed around. So I'm so honored and thrilled that you came on the show and that you're speaking for us next week, because it's just so admirable, everything you've done.
Well, I've always been interested in strategy and just being an observer and trying to figure out why one thing worked over the other. So I'd love to share that with women. I'm really looking forward to next week, too. Judy, I really appreciate being invited to talk at the event, and I hope we have a good time doing that.
Oh, well, thank you. And I can't wait either. I can't wait to see you, and it's just going to be fantastic. And Kate, before we go, I just want to let people know where they can get a hold of you. Your book is all over the place, of course, on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. But what's the website you would like them to refer to?
Probably I have two, because I have a stupidly bifurcated brand as a mystery writer and this other person. But for anything to do with the career books or speaking, it's katewhitespeaks.com.
Well, we are so excited. We have taken a little bit of the mystery out of Kate White, but I'm sure there's more mystery.
I can't wait to hear the rest on Tuesday.
I know, right? I am so jealous. Well, Kate, thank you so much. And next week we're going to have Ariel Ford. She's coming on the show. She is a publicist. She has launched the careers of people like Deepak Chopra, Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, and many other iconic authors, some of my favorites here. Mm-hmm. And she's an author herself. And she is writing about manifesting that soulmate. Ooh, spring is sprung and love's in the air. So we've got some soulmate talk going on next week.
Oh, wow. I thank you ladies so much for having me on and just talking to you. It's great.
Oh my gosh, it was our pleasure.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's our honor, and we're so happy to have you. And you're a champion just like Siri Lindley is. She's a professional triathlon coach. She's going to be on next week. She's been a world champion several times over, and it's such an exciting show tonight and next week. So please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube. Don't miss one show. Also check us out on whatwomenwantradio.com for more information. And good night, everybody.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mwah, mwah.